We are creating a platform for those who are curious, one that tells the story from the artist's perspective. Moments in time captured from the innovators who are reshaping dance, music, theater, and the visual arts. This is the Working Artist Project.
Today is a special day because I had the opportunity to sit down with a world-renowned educator to discuss a variety of topics. Kelli Watson is truly an amazing writer, an amazing person, an amazing mother, and as far as I can tell, she's an amazing wife. Kelli started a blog called The Chill Out Teacher to address several issues that she was facing in her life, from overworking, dealing with rambunctious students, dealing with the challenges of becoming a new mother. And today we tackle a lot of those subjects and more. And I think you guys are really going to dig this episode, and I hope you dig in and enjoy the ride with us. Today on the Working Artist Project, I have the one and only Kelli Watson.
Hi.
So I want to get right into it, man. You're a teacher. I mean, that's like maybe like 1% of who you are as a person, but that's what we're here today. We're going to talk about your writing, your teaching, being a mom, and also being a wife. And so first I want to get right into the teaching. Like, why do you teach?
Big one. That's like a number one interview question I feel that they ask out there. Why do you do what you do? I mean, I got into it for one reason and I stayed in it for another. I come from a family of educators, so my grandmother was a principal in a time period where things were really different. I think she used to put her feet up in her office and like smoke cigarettes when parents were in there having parent-teacher conferences. It was a different time. But she was my number one inspiration, so I got into it for that. But now I just, I feel like if I'm going to be here and do something in this world, I want to contribute to the future. And this is my one way that I know that I'm waking up, working hard every day, doing something that's going to actually make a difference.
Got you. Okay. Yeah, man. Like, teachers, for me, like, I can remember all the great teachers, you know, and for some of them, it was like maybe I was a dick to my teacher, so I remember them. Like, I have a 5th grade teacher that I cursed out. You know, her name was Miss Green. It's
yeah.
Like, I remember her not because she was a great teacher, but because I was just a dickhead kid, you know. And,
right.
And I'm sure you have to deal with that kind of thing. And then I had a great teacher, Perry Combs, who was one of the main reasons why I'm a musician today. You know, he gave me an opportunity to attend an art school without actually being able to play an instrument, really, you know. Mm-hmm. And you know, and I was thinking about this too. And then I had this other teacher in high school, and he used to have this thing called Funky Fridays. He was a history teacher. But it was a sham. It was like the first day he was like, every Friday we have a great time, you know, Funky Fridays. And then like Friday would show up and we would just do the regular work, you know. And the whole time we're doing all this hard work, he's just screaming out Funky Friday, woo, you know.
Yeah, we call it sneaking in the vegetables.
Okay.
You know what you want your kids to learn, you know what you got to get done, but if you can frame it in some sort of way where it's Freaky Friday, or you know, like party time, we're gonna do like party time math, and they can feel like it's something fun for them. It's a better turnout. If they feel like it's gonna be hard work, they just get how you were as a 5th grader.
Yeah, it's funny because I didn't really even think about it. It was like, wait, we got tricked, man. Like just recently, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. That's the thing too, is I think like some of the better teachers are, you know, I hate to use the word manipulators. Maybe it's more strategic is a better word, but you have to be really strategic with kids because you're competing against their social world, and anything that's not, fun and having to do with friends at a certain age is just not worth their time.
Right.
So if you don't make it something that's going to engage them or trick them or manipulate them into thinking that it's just fun and games, then you can lose them after a few minutes.
Right. I think your story is unique because most people, or as far as I know, most teachers teach in one school system, in one state, in one city, in one town. But you've taught in Detroit, Los Angeles, Chicago, you've taught in Prague. Now you're in New Orleans. And that has to give you a certain amount of like vision, like, because you can compare all of those different environments and then apply that to your current environment to be a better teacher, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's really powerful. Coupled with a lot of those experiences, I was doing grassroots charter schools. Besides when I was abroad, that was a different kind of setting, international school. But everywhere else has been these grassroots schools where you start with kind of like nothing, little resources, mostly a staff that has less than 5 years experience, and working with parents and students who are just hoping for something bigger and better. Mm-hmm. Seeing that kind of setting in all these different cities was like an education in itself. For me. And it's really humbling too to think that, oh, I did this in Chicago, I can do it in LA, or I did this in LA, I can do it in New Orleans. And it's not. I mean, a lot of the best practices are universal, but the environments and the communities are different.
Right. So how do you spark creativity, since, we're both creatives? You're a writer, primarily. I'm a musician. Like, how do you spark that creativity in a young student when you see it?
I think part of it is getting to know your students and know what sparks them. But if you can find something that they're good at and then develop that, that is where at least that's what works for me with the creativity is, with a student, for me, it's writing, it's creative writing, so that I can tap into that a lot more easier with my students than say, scientific investigations or something like that. But if I find out that a student is super curious and they're really into astronomy, I mean, it takes me 30 seconds to Google while the kids are writing their names on the paper. I mean, that's how quick it is these days. The structured system of school, being told what to learn and when to learn it, isn't always for everyone. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a good point, because of the way I went through school, school was fun sometimes, but also I don't know if school is set up really to educate certain types of individual, effectively, or it just seems like you can't put squares into circles. You know what I mean? It's like, well, maybe I learned this way, but it's not really set up for that. It's set up to take tests. You know what I mean? These tests, and you just pass the test. Sometimes you don't actually learn anything, or maybe like you're super creative and you daydream a lot, and now like you're, the teacher thinks you're just some idiot. You know what I mean? Like they can't.
Yeah.
I don't know if teachers always have the tools to deal with all the different types of personalities in the classroom.
Yeah, I think like if you have a drummer in your class, and you have a visual artist in your class, and you have a bookworm in your class, you just have people with different interests, but then you have kids with different backgrounds. You have kids with different home lives. You have kids with different levels, like different reading levels, different levels of confidence. You have all these things. And yeah, I would love to be able to hit every single student and maximize their interest and their engagement. But I don't know, even after 13, 14 years, how to hit every kid's maximum interest and give them exactly what they need in the time that we have, and just with, the resources that we have.
Right. Okay. Look, that's a rabbit hole. So I don't want to go. We can talk about this the whole time, but what I really want to talk about is your blog and how that came about. Like, I guess it's 2 years old now.
Yeah, it's 2 years old. I think it started, I don't know, I must have, my daughter was probably 6 months old, maybe. It started kind of with like for myself. I had, just had my first child, was recently married. I think I started about a month after I was married, and realized that, wow, like if I don't change my lifestyle, I'm not going to be able to be a good mom or a good teacher or a good wife or a good friend. So I started thinking about that a lot, and I'm like, hey, talking to friends, like just friends of mine, and then my teacher friends, and they said, hey, you should put this on paper. So I started writing it, and then it became a little escape for myself each week, and then built some followers, especially with newer teachers, because what I started to realize was, why did I wait 12 or 13 years to do this? Mm-hmm. Not the blog, but to live this way.
Right.
You in your 20s, yeah, we're building our careers, we're workaholics, a lot of us, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that to a certain extent, but if you're a teacher who's burnt out all the time, you can't be that effective. Mm-hmm. So that was the part that I was trying to get across to people, is that, you don't really have to wait to have a kid or wait to, live in New Orleans and want to prioritize your social life and time with your husband more.
I failed to mention the name of the blog, and it's the Chill Out Teacher, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
I like that. What I noticed is, like, as the blog goes on, you have a tagline. Now you have a tagline at the end of the blog, right?
Yes.
What is it?
That's power to the teacher.
Power to the teacher?
Correct.
That's deep, man. It's, I think the blog was great. I remember seeing it on Facebook, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. And so it kind of gives you, the normal person, a look into what it's like to be a teacher. And at moments, you have this one entry where you're talking about working on 7 days a week, mm-hmm. and like, I was like, wow, so being a teacher is like being a slave. And as a student, you don't think about it. Like, you do your homework and you don't really think about, like, hey, this teacher needs to, like, grade this homework. This teacher's got to come up with lesson plans and mm-hmm. put tests together, and also figure out interesting ways to engage the students. It's like, when does this job actually stop? So it was interesting reading that entry, being like, wow, you had to really make some tough decisions for yourself. And can you talk about those in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, I think in the last 2 years, I don't really have a choice, because when I get home, I'm mom. And bottom line for any parent is that your own child is going to come before your students, which was really hard because I lived for my students for, the 12 years before that. And so the decisions for having to spend time with my daughter and my husband, that's kind of a no-brainer. But there are those gray areas of having your laptop out when you could be spending time and having good conversations with your family. Or, hey, I could go in on the weekends. The building's open. I could go in for 2 hours, make my copies for the week, and then have more time during the week. But as we know with teachers, is the job is never done. So yeah, I go in for 2 hours, and then I still stay 2 hours later to do whatever other idea we have to make the classroom more interesting this week. So the decision the decision that's made is just to say no. Oh. You have to say no.
Yeah.
To yourself, and honestly, it's to your students. I mean, I would love to spend a lot of time giving feedback on student essays, but as the years gone on, I pick little pieces to give written feedback on for students, but other than that, I can't sit there for 4 hours on a weekend and grade essays.
Yeah, for sure. I want to get back to 100%. I want to go back and just touch on this no thing, because I feel mm-hmm. like the power to say no, or just the willingness to say no, is one of those things that we all have to learn. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, saying no for musicians can be saying no to a gig that you don't necessarily want to do, but you're just going to do it because it's some extra money, or saying no to your students or saying no to parents or saying no to your spouse. You know what I mean? Like, how did you, like, what, were you just in the house like, okay, I got to say no to these motherfuckers tomorrow? Like, you know,
I mean, yeah, I think, I don't know. It was kind of like an empowerment that comes with saying no, because I see a lot of myself and some of the younger teachers that are just straight out of college that are saying yes to everything. And they're 22 and they look like they're 26, or they're 22 and they look like they're 40, because they're working all day, you know, working all night, going to happy hour, and, you know, probably binge drinking for a bit just to like forget the day and then doing it all over again. So to me, it's like, okay, maybe if I say no, it will influence other people, and it will be easier the next time I have to think about saying no and saying, hey, like, I said no a couple times ago and it worked out better for my family or better for me. And, you know, ultimately I got to take care of my family.
Right.
So, you know, if I see, it is about me too, because I am part of the family. I'm not this person that's just only, I'm not trying to sit here and say I do everything for other people, but it is really, if I'm burnt out and I'm tired, I'm, you know, pissed off at my husband and really short with the kids, and, you know, not taking care of I'm pregnant now with our second kid. So not taking care of the baby, I can't mess with that.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I see. This brings me to one of your, I guess, your newer entries when you were talking about safety in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And this one, I was like, wow, I never thought about that, especially as a pregnant woman. Like, if something happens in the classroom where a kid is being violent or seems to be upset, like, your first priority is now to protect your baby, you, then the 29 other students in the room. And you alluded to the fact that sometimes it's better not to poke the bear. Like, there's a kid in class, maybe he's asleep, but he has a temper problem, let him sleep.
Yeah, I mean, the blog is very honest. I would hate to admit that out loud, but I obviously did on the internet. But there's certain things that I might do just not to poke the bear. I definitely don't like lack discipline or enforce discipline because I know a kid's going to get pissed off about something. But when it is something that having to do with violence, or I know their triggers, when you know, they might put hands on another student or me or those kinds of things. Yeah, I just kind of let things go that maybe I shouldn't, just to protect the other kids. And now that I am pregnant, I am thinking about myself, but you have kids that they're looking at the teacher to keep them safe. Mm-hmm. And if they feel like you're not doing everything to keep them safe, that affects everything else in the classroom.
Right.
So that's a thing that I think that we have all these procedures for students with emotional needs or students that are violent and things like that. But, you know, the teacher is really like the number one line of safety for those 29, 30 students.
Right.
And that's a lot for us.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. Like, man, you know, you mentioned in one of your posts also, since we're on this safety kick, that once you had to take a gun from a kid. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like, for me, gun violence in schools, like, I remember when I was in high school in all the gun thing, like Columbine. Remember Columbine? Mm-hmm. And all of that stuff was happening. Like, it was kind of a big deal then. Like, that had never happened before. And now that level of violence in schools seems to be the norm. And so how do you protect your students, or how do you make them feel safe when that type of thing is always looming in the background?
I mean, I think the working in schools of poverty, like, this whole time, you know, besides my first couple of years, it's a reality at home. I mean, if you're in a school community that has guns in a school every so often, that's because the community is like that. You know, it's not just like a random, you know, I'm not talking about a random gun here. I'm talking about a school and working in schools that have, you know, guns pop up every so often. And there's gang violence in the community, and, you know, students that have ankle bracelets and stuff like that when they're 12 and 13. but you have this duty as an educator to make them feel safe at school. So it's like no matter what's happening at home in the community, they should be able to come to school and feel safe. Mm-hmm. So the hard part of that is you're trying to make them feel safe, but as soon as they see a fight in their classroom or they hear about, a sexual assault, against a student on student sexual assault or anything that makes them scared, it's like, damn, like I thought school was my safe place. Right. So, the thing that I like because I can't control all of that as much as we try to, I just try to make the classroom the safe escape. Right. And educate them to have a voice so that when they do get back out in the community, they can do something about all the crap happening on the streets. But that when they're there, when they're, escaping in a book or, feeling really good about themselves, about learning something that they never knew how to do before, it can be like a distraction in a positive way. Yes. To what they have to deal with sometimes at home. Yeah.
Yeah, safe space is one of those things that for me is like a heterosexual man. Like it's something that you don't necessarily always think about. And I recently came into a situation, just a life situation where I was like, oh, wait a minute. Certain people need a safe place. And you just describing that just made me think, in certain communities, maybe there are no safe spaces. If you're not safe at home, you're not safe in your neighborhood, and then you're not safe as a kid in school, you're not safe in church. Where can you be safe?
Well, no. And that's why I think, drugs and alcohol come at an earlier age sometimes because you can escape, they find that escape in drugs or in sex or in whatever it may be that they're finding a way to run away from the reality that's in front of them. Mm-hmm.
Wow. This is teaching us.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want this conversation to get all serious like this, but
no, it's okay. Like
some of these things, some of these things I don't think that people, understand. I didn't understand until I was in it, and not just in it as a teacher. I mean, in it in these specific situations, like these specific scenarios where, something in Compton in Los Angeles and that school out there would be handled completely different maybe than it would be in Baton Rouge or in South Bend or in Detroit. Mm-hmm. And definitely overseas, things were handled a lot differently. But
right.
It's just, yeah.
So, man, like I would like just going to school. I mean, it seems like when I was a kid, these are things that I never thought about. I just went to school to have fun with my friends, and my mom made me go to school, and I really went to school to play drums. It's like, okay, drums are at school, my friends are there, but I never went to school thinking today. I never really felt danger at school, but maybe that's a new reality for 2018 in certain communities. And being a person, I'm assuming, who did not grow up in that community only because you're white. I'll be honest. That's why I'm assuming.
No, that's fine. I mean, I didn't. I grew up in good schools. Well, because my parents are not educators. My dad has like a 2-year associate's degree, and my mom didn't go to college. But like my grandmother, and like aunts and uncles were educators, and we lived in areas based on the school system.
Right.
So that was how. I mean, that's the kind of environment I grew up in, was that education was just primary. It was everything. So I did not experience anything like that until, actually, like most teachers do, they get a teaching job in a community like that.
Right.
That's why, this is another conversation too, but kind of evolving from the blog was teacher sustainability and teacher retention. We have these fantastic teachers out there that are quitting after a few years because it's so hard, understandably so, but also because they grew up in, middle class communities like myself, and if, lack of diversity and lack of struggle, if you will, and they get in these situations and then they can't relate, they can't deal, and it just, it pushes them either into the suburbs to teach in the suburbs or just into a different field entirely.
Now, how did you circumvent that, or how did you rise above that situation for yourself?
It's funny. People ask me that all the time. My family and friends that are educators, I'm the only one who, from Detroit, my homegirls and my family that are in urban environment schools or inner city, whatever you want to call it. They are all in, affluent communities. And honestly, I was talking to my girl the other day about discipline, and she doesn't even have a behavior plan because they don't have discipline issues. Mm. So, how did I rise above and stay with it? I guess I think many times I've thought about going to where they call it to be easier, because the biggest issue for me has always been class culture and behavior. Because when you are working with students that don't always have that structure at home, it's hard to keep that structure in the classroom.
Right.
Or to call a parent, and say that a kid told you to F off, and they're screaming at you to F off. It's like, all right,
Right.
But mostly, I don't even know if this is a real statistic, but I would bet you that a lot of the teachers in schools of poverty don't stick around for that long. So you have a lot of kids living in certain communities that don't get the best education because the teachers aren't experienced enough.
Right.
So it's why not stick around and push through and stay in areas. And some of these schools are fantastic. It's just harder because you're dealing with poverty, and poverty to me takes over, can take over the best of situations for kids.
All music on today's show is by the band The Session. Thanks for listening to the Working Arts Project. I want to switch gears here for a second and get back to your writing. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious to know how your writing has changed, because look, you were writing way before the blog. Mm-hmm. I'm sure of it. And so how your writing has changed since becoming a mother and wife. I know Michael's annoying, so he had to add some
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, so since becoming a mom, my writing has definitely evolved, because I'm not thinking so much about just myself. I mean, now, and being a wife. So a lot of the things that I write about or that frustrate me have to do with things that I never had to deal with before, because I really have to be done at 4 or 4:30, at least mentally. I can't always be thinking about school and being distracted, but I mean, mostly I think taking the time to write the blog doesn't, it takes a couple hours. That's not really the thing, but it is what I'm doing in writing. It is helping me. It's therapeutic to write, which is why I've always written. But is it going to inspire someone else to take back their life, even if just for a weekend? And to be able to maybe say no, or to stand up for themselves, or to realize that this superhero pressure that society has on teachers sometimes isn't real. And maybe just, allow them to modify their lifestyle a little bit, or inspire them to modify their lifestyle to stop taking on so much as a teacher and thinking that we have to, save kids, and if we don't stay up all night planning the coolest, most creative lesson ever, that they're going to still be okay. Yeah. And by trial and error, by having a family now, I had to figure out ways to make it work and still be the best teacher that my kids deserve without losing myself and letting it affect my family.
I like that. So basically, you're trying to save the world, man. So you out here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm already saving the kids.
Right.
I mean, mom of the year over here. I was yesterday or 2 days ago. I was like, man, if people could see me now, I love candy, and being pregnant, I eat even more candy than ever. But so Sour Patch Kids are my favorite, and I was eating them, and I had my hand out just next to my daughter, who's going to be 2 this week, and she's taking her little fingers and putting them in her mouth and like dipping in them in my hands that have the like the little Sour Patch sugary sour pieces.
Oh no!
And I'm like, man, and I'm just looking at her, and she's so cute, and I'm letting her do it. And I think I was like scrolling on Instagram or something, and I'm like, man, what a mother I am. If people could see me now.
Look, man, I'm gonna get some people are gonna be upset that you letting her eat sugar. Just so you know, I'm gonna get all kind of messages about.
Oh yeah. Oh no, I know. That's another thing too. Is the sugar thing and all the things that I never thought. I mean, not like we feed our sugar like a lot, but the fact that the things that I do that I just never thought I would have as a mom. Right. But I mean, you do your best and you survive. And Michael and I are doing the best that we can. He's very devoted to his career also. Right. But we found a way to still, to at least try to do both.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I really like your style of writing, like you open up, especially the later blogs, like you open the blogs up with like a very relatable story, right? And then right after that, it's like all of a sudden you're hitting them with some serious information. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. It's like, damn, I'm learning something. This is crazy. Like, how did you develop that style, and like what authors do you dig, or journals that you check out to get to that place?
The style for me is that I get ADD with articles now, so you have everything at your fingertips. So if I read something that does not have to do with education, like some sort of career inspired article, if it doesn't have to do with education in the career sense or motherhood, or, I grew up as a dancer or something like that of my passion, I cannot read it. But if someone's telling some sort of anecdote that I can relate to, they hook me. So that's twofold. One, to be honest with you, being an ELA teacher, a language arts teacher for so long, is like one of the number one writing strategies that I teach my kids. And so through that, over and over, it's called the hook strategy. Is when you're telling a narrative, when you write narratives, you use you write in the first couple paragraphs some sort of hook to engage the reader. You usually start with a quote. This is kids level here. Like, you start with a quote, you start with a fact, you start with an anecdote about something in your personal life or whatever. And through that and my own experiences of ADD while reading, I just realized that, maybe this writing is for me, but if it is going to reach other people, then my husband's not a teacher, and I want him to be able to get into it. And, friends and family and other people out there, maybe if they're in advertising or they're in music or, I don't know, veterinarians or something, they could relate on whatever my message is that week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you've accomplished that 100%, dude. Like, it's very easy to read. It's like, oh yeah, man. Like, I get that there's a kid sleeping in class, and like, he might be an angry big kid. You don't want to wake him up. Like, that's easy for me to understand. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you
well, yeah. And it's not just, in school either, is this kind of stuff. Like, one of the ones I wrote more recently was, I left my recent job and to work at a new one, and I had double parent-teacher conferences. So, like, just happened to be in the calendar. I had them 2 weeks in a row at my 2 different schools. Right. And I talked about how, as a parent, a teacher now, I'm nicer as a parent.
Oh yeah.
Than I was before, and like I said, didn't sugarcoat anything, never have. But it's like, I'm just a little bit more understanding of what it's like, and you could read that, being in any field understand how you treat people differently once you do have a child, or once you go through a trauma in your life, or once you get married, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
It's just that self-reflection piece.
Yeah, I actually was having a discussion with my girlfriend this morning about that one. But, because I thought it was interesting. I was like, man, wow, like it's something you don't think about, not because I'm not a parent, and like, but I do remember my mom going to parent teacher conferences and being like, me being nervous and her being like, you better, and so like I can see the parents in there kind of already on edge about life, and like, and then in your blog, you mentioned that you're just, like you say, you're a little bit nicer and you're a little bit more understanding. Like, okay, this lady might have just had a bad day and it's not me that she's upset with. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was really easy to imagine and understand. Like, oh, okay, that makes sense, So.
Yeah. I think that relatable piece, like you said, I don't really work and study other writers the way that I used to. But I do read a lot, and that's something that I really, I don't know, like celebrate with my students, is just reading for pleasure, and how much we can just learn from reading a book that we're into.
Right.
So, by reading as an adult, I don't really read novels anymore. I wish I said that I did. I read like kids novels that I'm about to teach my students. But just reading, you learn and study about good writers. And that's kind of what I want to educate my students about, is as we read, we're reading for enjoyment, we're reading for pleasure, but we're also learning styles and like how to be creators ourselves. And studying these authors inspire us to potentially use our voice. If we're going to use it in writing, now some kids will use it in music, or some kids will use it in art, or public speaking, whatever it may be, but we have the power to, put our little piece out into the world and make change happen if we can articulate it in a strategic and artistic way that people want to listen.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I dig. Now you say you read a lot, man. One of the blog posts said you don't read as much as you used to, but I'm not going to call you out. No,
that's what I just said. I don't read novels anymore. I used to be like Miss Queen of the Kindle when it came out, and but no, I mean, I just I read articles a lot, and mommy articles, and what to do when your toddler won't sleep at night, and that kind of stuff, like things that I need to know.
Right.
But also, there's a lot of good, short length articles posted on social media that my friends will post. That I love that about Facebook, and despite all the other things I don't like about it, is, I'm learning about things that are important to my friends, in little bite-sized pieces that I can digest while, waiting for the sweet potato for my daughter to cook in the oven.
Right, for sure. Now, this is bringing us to the portion of the interview that I call the word game. It's a real creative name, I know.
Okay. Love it.
So basically, I say words. You tell me the first story that comes to mind when you hear the word.
Okay. Love it. Go.
Okay. Freedom.
So the first story that comes to mind is more recent. I had a bad day at work, and I wanted to watch this film called The Freedom Writers. Yeah. It's about this teacher in LA who she's working in a school that's like a challenge, and all these teachers don't believe in these kids, and then she turns them around, and with learning about the Holocaust and writing journals and stuff like that. And so I watched the movie, and I was just like, man, this is bullshit. Like, how does this teacher go and turn these kids around, but with their writing? She brings in like these journals and teaches them about how the Holocaust was similar to certain pieces of the civil rights movement and things that the kids could relate to out of LA. And the freedom, like the irony of it all for me was that, watching this woman that did this and turn these students around, was that, as educators, we may not be this woman, but we can do something small to change our kids. It was just like this emotional roller coaster I had about being so disappointed and frustrated with myself that, yeah, this is one story that they made a movie off this woman, and I was trying to be inspired by it. But, you know, like, we can let ourselves, or I can let myself go a little bit and stop trying to compare myself to this woman in the movie and realize that that really horrible day that I had that I remember recently, you know, there's these little things that are accomplishments in a way that may not be a movie, but are something.
Defiance.
Defiance. So I want to tell this story, but it's not my own.
Okay, let's hear it.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Someone close to me recently had an experience with, like, who was pulled over by the police.
Okay.
And African American, on his way home from work, pulled over by the police for, like, no turn signal or something like that. This was a couple weeks ago. And he got pulled over, had not been drinking, pulled out license registration, and for whatever reason, the cops asked him to get out of the car. And he said, no. He said, can I ask you why I need to get out of the car? And they didn't give him a reason. And he asked again, and he asked again. And then finally, they practically pulled him out of the car and did a search and the whole thing. Cuffed him, threw him on the ground, broke his phone, you know, just like the story after story. Like you hear and you read about. But the defiant part of it was, you know, when I asked him about it, I said, hey, like, did you really think, like, did you have to question them and say, why do I have to get out of the car? Because you know that as a black man right now, what's going to happen, it's not going to go your way no matter what. So just by asking a question is just like, you know, shut your freaking mouth. Don't push it with what could happen to you. And he said, you don't understand, like, if I don't say something, it's never going to change. And I said, do you really, and this is coming from white woman to black man, you know, so I'm very, like, I don't want to say naive, but, like, I understand that I will never go through something like that. So I can't understand, but I just said something about, like, you know, you'd rather put your life at risk by asking why you have to get out of the car. Like, just get out of the freaking car. And he's like, you don't get it. You'll never get it. But if I don't say something, even if they are going to beat my ass, even if they are going to shoot me, even if they are going to arrest me for nothing, at least I'm questioning authority and maybe making someone in there think. Now, you know, he could have taken it even further and refused this and refused that, and just, you know, there are other ways that he could have handled it to make it even a bigger thing. But when all is said and done, you know, obviously they searched the car, didn't find anything, and then sent him on his way, with, you know, like, be careful or some crap like that. But the defiant part of it was just like, man, like, I just, you know, you don't think sometimes, especially when it's not that level of oppression and, like, lack of justice and all the other words I could go on about, but you don't think about how just speaking up sometimes are people's way of, you know, being defiant, I guess, can be with words. It's not always with something explosive.
Right. 100%. Man, that, you know, listen, those stories always get me, and I know it gets all of us emotionally riled up because they don't have to happen. And immediately I'm thinking, as a teacher, like, as a person of authority, because for me, like, teachers, my mom and teachers were the highest people. Like, they were perfect. You know what I mean? Like, you could never imagine your teacher doing anything but perfect shit, you know? And like, how do you like teach, because you have the kids longer than their parents in some cases,
right,
per day. Like, how do you teach those kids or convey the message? Like, look, you know, when it comes, not that it's your job, but maybe it is, I don't know. When it comes to dealing with police officers, you know, like maybe you should do these things. Maybe you should at least think about doing these things, because you won't be safe and you will probably be considered wrong just because you're brown or black or, you know what I mean? It's like, and as a white woman or any person who doesn't look like them, how do you get that across to them, or do you even try in those situations?
Yeah, I mean, I think for one thing is just understanding the realities of myself being a white woman, teaching mostly, you know, brown and black, and this is the first time now I'm in a school that is diverse. I think I've only taught in African American schools, and some Hispanic in Los Angeles, but like I haven't taught white kids until now, in the United States. So I realize everything that comes out of my mouth isn't always, it is sometimes received as educational, but sometimes is received as like, what does this white woman have to say to me now? Because of situations like the one I just told you, that happened a couple weeks ago with, you know, what if kids are in the car with their parents when this stuff happens all the time. And so there's one thing is just like understanding and being aware that not sometimes, but like race is a part of the classroom. And when you are a white teacher teaching African American kids, there are, you know, that's a thing, that's real. But in terms of what I can do, the best thing that I can focus on is teaching them how to have a voice where people will listen. And that comes, you know, a lot of that is in the academic side of it, is being able to find, research things that are important to you and find evidence to prove your point and be articulate doing so that you're not just going ranting and raving about something, that if you have some sort of mission or stance that you want to take, that there is a way to be able to be heard in the way that some of, you know, in history where that people that you would think never would have made a difference actually have.
Yeah. Look.
So, you know, like that's what I try to focus on, because the anger is real and it's in them. And if you know, if I can find a way to teach them how to like be productive with that anger, if you will,
yeah.
You know, they might feel some freedom in that sense.
Yeah, I agree. Y'all heard it here first, man. Like, look, man, y'all getting this for free, you know? Don't forget to check out Kelly's blog, The Chill Out Teacher, you know? We're coming to the end here. Is there anything, you know, any subjects you want to touch that we didn't touch?
One thing that like I'm really, really passionate about right now is making sure that we keep good teachers in the classroom. And that I've had plenty of times where I wanted to quit and just, you know, leave the field, and still I still have those moments now. But I just like, I'm not trying to like preach and all that, but I don't know, Darren, if you want to talk about that any further, if there's any questions you have about that. But I think like that's right now with all the effed up stuff in the world, if we have good teachers in classrooms, like a lot of this stuff it can be fixed or resolved or just improved somehow with what's going on in our country right now.
Right. I mean, honestly, it's something I don't know anything about, but I am an advocate for it. Like, hey, we need the best people in the classroom that we can possibly have, but maybe we need, you know, more incentives to get those people there, better pay, you know, right, or better benefits or something, you know, like teachers should make, I think they should make, you know, starting $100,000 a year. I mean, come on, you would never have a bad teacher at that salary. you know, at least I don't think you would, maybe, but.
Yeah. I mean, that would be the number one thing. You could work around the clock and not feel bad about $100,000, but that's true. And and other countries are spending a lot of money preparing their teachers so that once they get in the classroom, they're better prepared. Mm-hmm. In Europe right now, a lot of the teacher certification programs, you need to have a master's to even get into the classroom. And you have, it's really difficult to get in some of the programs as it would be to apply for law school, for example.
Oh, wow.
And so you have this like strong preparation. You think about that. Maybe people will survive longer. Hate to use the word survive, but last longer in this world that we're in because they're trained better how to cope with things or just with content. They become better math teachers and science teachers because they know more.
I'll say this and take it with a grain of salt. Like I've read some articles about teaching and teaching in places where you look like the people that you're teaching. Mm-hmm. And so maybe in this circumstance too, if the people who are in charge of hiring teachers could figure out a way, and the people who are in charge of educators can figure out a way to bridge that gap, to teach more Black, brown, Latino, like all types of people, to get those people in the right places. You know what I mean? So mm-hmm. Because maybe it's easier for a kid to learn from a guy that looks like him or a woman that looks like him or her, and to digest the information. Maybe mm-hmm. there needs to be more balance. Like growing up, I didn't have that many Black male teachers. Right now, I can only remember 2 mm-hmm. in all, from kindergarten through 12th grade. So I know in the classrooms where I had Black male teachers, I did my work a little. I don't know why, but it was just one of those things like, all right, I gotta mm-hmm. be more serious. But if I had a white teacher, I remember terrorizing some of my white female teachers just because I could, just clowning, you know what I mean?
Right.
So like I said, I'm no expert. You are. So I don't know. I'm just kind of.
Well, yeah, no, I don't, I've done some research on that. And I know what I have read is that race does affect effectiveness. So I haven't done a ton of research on it, but what I did find was that in the articles I read, that minimally it does impact it. So if you are learning from someone of the same race as you minimally do better.
Okay.
So, maybe that's your new mission. But it, even if that, in that kind of case, I don't agree that we should just go through school. And I know you're not saying this, with just learning from people who look like us, but there should be a level of diversity in the classroom, of teachers, mm-hmm. just like there is in our country.
Yes.
So, you should, learning from a teacher of Latino descent is going to be, contribute to your education, I think, just in the same way as African American or white, and just these different perspectives, like how cool that could be. If you had that. I grew up with I think until high school, maybe I had like all white teachers until high school. Right. So I never really, in high school I had a couple. I think I had like a woman from France or something, but other than that, I had to wait till college to have a professor that actually grew up in Honduras. Yeah. So, that's definitely part of it. It is just like, the country, our country it looks different everywhere you go. I'm sure New York is a lot different than other cities in terms of diversity, but sure. It is our country, the U.S. We gotta start matching that in the schools, Yeah,
we gotta do better. I ask everyone who comes on the podcast this question, and it's, what are the 3 things you're most thankful for?
Family, not just Adeline and Michael, but my parents and grandparents, and my friends go into my family in my world. So friends and family. Number 2, I'm thankful for the passion and fire within me to be able to do what I love to do every day. Mm-hmm. I'm thankful that I have that, that I have that within me. And then lastly, this is a tough one. I'm really thankful and blessed for the opportunity to travel in my past, and even a little bit now, to learn and expand and grow from people that are different from me. Yeah. That's a true blessing, to see the world beyond my own.
I like that one. I mean,
I know, as a musician, you know how that is too, but and just like how humbling it can be, and how you just realize how little you really know about life after you travel.
It's a beautiful thing. I love it.
It is. You pay for your travel.
Yeah, right. I don't have to pay for it, so it's even better.
But I know. Yeah, I know it's not so glamorous all the time either.
Right. That's true. Yo, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And
you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So once again, the Chill Out Teacher. What's the address?
It's chilloutteacher.blogspot.com.
There it is, y'all. So check it out. And so thanks for coming on the Working Artist Project.
Thank you.
I can't thank you guys enough for listening to this podcast and going on this journey with me week after week. But before you go, I would like to ask you to do a few more things. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast. The Working Artist Project is brought to you by Second Line Arts Collective. Find out more at secondlinearts.org.
Sometimes life escapes us. Other times it fills us. But now it frightens and reveals its true purpose. Only now can I see. Only now can I feel its breath on my neck, caressing me as if she had loved me. Can you hear that? Can you feel it attempting to escape? I see. I understand now more than ever that your only purpose is to extinguish. Stop. Wait. Sometimes life escapes us. Gasping, crying, laughing in disbelief. Please, can't you see that it was all for you? I only... My hands, look at them, asking me to do what I can't, what I shouldn't, but I must. Please, God, give me the strength to do what you have. Wait. How did I get here? Stop. I love you, and God will take care of you now. Yes, God. My hands drenched in red water, It's warm. It's wet. My once white shirt is now stained with life. Her life. Mom.